What's going on, everyone? It is the Derf, and today I'm bringing you an absolutely ridiculous Warlock build, a toxic Nanite spreading Warlock. This build features two fan favorite exotics that every Warlock lover out there has had experience with in one way or another, and pairs them with the Seasons artifact. Add to that a couple of weapons, and what we're going to essentially have here is an OG Strand Warlock that can debuff, suspend, unravel, and of course absolutely melt every enemy that comes in your way. So if you've been looking for a way to spam your Strand Warlock in virtually every way imaginable, pairing it with some new seasonal weapons, look no further than this build. This build is extremely simple to use and extremely potent. Let's go. To get us started with our toxic Nanites build, we of course are going to access OG Strand Brood Weaver Warlock subclass. Of course, our super of choice is going to be Needle Storm, and this is going to be key because everything that we do in one way or another is going to cause chaos, and Needle Storm is going to be essentially the climax of that every time we generate our super. For abilities, we're going to go with the Healing Rift, Burst Glide, Arcane Needle, and the Grapple Grenade. We're going to be using our Grapple melee to further spread our toxicity all over the battlefield, and I realize how horrible that sounds, but you get what I mean. The key here is poisoning and spreading the poison and the toxicity around to all the enemies in our way. For aspects, first up on the list is going to be Mind Spun Invocation. Your Grapple, Shackle, and Threadling Grenade have enhanced functionality. If you scroll to the grapple portion, your grapple melee spawns 3 Threadling eggs. So that is going to further our chaos, so to speak, at the end, kind of like a cherry on top, to using our melee, which again is going to be spreading poison everywhere. Second up is the Wanderer. Tangles you throw attached to targets and detonate into a suspending burst. Destroying a tangle creates a suspending burst after a short delay. Threadling final blows create a tangle. So we got a bunch of things going on in this little paragraph here. We're going to get additional threadlings. We're going to get additional suspension, and it's going to detonate into a suspending burst after a short delay. All these things are going to just add to the overall chaos on top of all of the toxicity that we're going to be utilizing to our advantage to wear down our enemies. For fragments, Threat of Warding is first up on the list. Picking up an Orb of Power grants Woven Mail. Now we're going to double dip on what Woven Mail is giving to us. First and foremost, Woven Mail is going to give us damage resistance. Once we get to the artifact, we're going to buff our grenade regen and our class ability regen, as well as our melee. Next up is Threat of Transmutation. While you have Woven Mail, weapon final blows create a tangle. Plus 10 to melee, so take that as a win. The key here is generating tangles. Tangles, of course, are going to give us suspending bursts because of our aspects, as well as one piece of the artifact, which I'll go over when we get to it. Next up is Threat of Fury. Damaging targets with a tangle grants melee energy. We want our melee back as fast as possible because it is the key to spreading and starting the poison. Last but not least, Thread of Isolation. Landing rapid precision hits emits a severing burst from the target. Now, what's important to note about this is the same thing that is important about Threat of Transmutation. In nowhere does it say that it has to be a strand weapon, which means we can opt for different weapons, really any weapon, honestly, although our featured exotic weapon is going to just amp up, or I guess ramp up, the damage, exponentially, and these two fragments right here are going to add to our overall carnage. For stat distribution, I recommend speccing into weapons, melee, and super in that order. I know you see the numbers on the screen don't match the order that I just said. You do want your melee to be at least at a 100, so you get a 190% recharge rate on your melee itself. You want your super to be at 100 as well. You can go above that to get some bonus super damage, but our key here is going to be our weapon damage, which is going to pair with the overall regen of our melee in general anyways. So the key here is spreading chaos and poison. Once you poison an enemy, you can then switch to your weapon, spread that poison evenly amongst all of the surrounding enemies. And in doing so, you're going to create your own additional weapon damage that's going to generate more ability energy back to you. For weapons, we're going to get right into it. Outbreak Perfected is absolutely busted this year. You want to make sure that you have rewind rounds on so that you can never stop firing until the battle is over. Parasitism, the weapon does more damage to enemies based on the number of SIVA nanites that attach to them. And of course, Disease Vector increases nanite damage. Enemies that die with nanites attached to them generate additional nanites. The Corruption Spreads, this weapon creates SIVA nanite swarms on rapid hits and precision kills. So you can use this weapon equally between clearing ads and doing damage from a distance to a boss. Yes, we're going to have some good weapons to pair with this that will also damage the boss in a very satisfying way. But the build is centered around Outbreak Perfected. If you have not taken Outbreak into Master or Grandmaster activities yet, you don't know what you're missing out on. And this build is only going to accentuate what Outbreak brings to the table this season. In the energy slot, we have Ahab Char. I highly, highly, highly recommend getting one that's got Burning Ambition and Proximity Power. Proximity Power is nice because final blows, when targets are nearby, grant an improved amount of bonus melee stat. So the more bonus melee stat that you have, the more damage you can output from it and or regenerate your ability in the same breath. And Burning Ambition is nice because it's an additional way to generate additional tick damage. So I like to bust this out. Champs majors, things like that. When you're laying into it, when you proc the Scorch with Burning Ambition, I like to lay into said enemy or boss with my melee and then finish them off with either my heavy weapon or Outbreak, or at least just dump enough rounds in them to generate the SIVA nanites on top of those other two debuffs already going on. In the heavy slot, we got the Boom Slang. This linear fusion rifle, again, kind of becoming a staple in all of my builds. I feel like I talk about it all the time, but Rolling Storm and Jolting Feedback is just such a nice combination to have. You have an infinite supply of bolt charge and jolting, that you can disperse amongst enemies far and wide. So on top of your Woven Mail, you're also going to be able to debuff 3 different ways with these weapons. With Outbreak, you're going to be able to, it's not really technically a debuff, but those nanites are considered weapon damage, which means they buff from your weapon stat. Ahab Char, of course, you get the Scorching effect, and then the Boom Slang, you get the jolting, the jolts applied to the enemy, not counting what we're going to be going over here with our armor. So on top of everything that we just talked about, Necrotic Grip, even though it's not a featured exotic, is going to basically be the focal point of the entire build. Now, the entire build, essentially, I know I called it a toxicity nanites or toxic nanites build, but if you've caught on this far, the build is centered around generating as much debuff and tick damage as possible. So Necrotic Grip can start it off or finish it off. Necrotic Grip also, when you use it with your melee, is going to send out unraveling rounds. So those are going to tick. Then you've got Outbreak with the nanites. Those are going to tick. Then you've got Ahab Char with Burning Ambition. That's going to tick. And then finally, when you're finishing them off with your heavy weapon, you've got Jolt being constantly applied to the enemy as well. So Grasp of the Devourer. Damaging a target with melee poisons them, dealing increased damage over time. Defeating a poisoned target spreads the condition. Provides a moderate benefit to the airborne effectiveness stat of all weapons of sorrow. So I have tried this build out with one of my favorite weapons, the Osteostriga, and I also tried this build out with Thorn. Absolutely nothing in the game right now compares to Outbreak Perfected. Maybe Necrochasm, but even then I go back and forth on, because Outbreak is just in a league of its own right now. Kinetic weapons got a little bit of some lovin' from Bungie when Edge of Fate dropped, and it further got some lovin' in one of the most recent patches. So add to that the fact that it can pierce barriers, and now you can infect a barrier champ with your powered melee. And then on top of it, you could also theoretically spawn a tangle once that champ is dead as well. And Outbreak just absolutely melts while the poison is going on. So the two pair extremely well together. For the rest of the armor mods, go ahead and spec into whatever general armor mod that you need. For the helmet, go ahead and put on a heavy ammo finder. I highly, highly, highly recommend Kinetic Siphon. The reason for this is you get more potent orbs of power on pickup. For the gauntlets, go ahead and put on 2 heavy-handeds, and you can throw on a fastball. I don't really actually know if the fastball affects how far you can throw your grapple out there. Maybe someone can let me know in the comments if that does actually affect it or not. I don't think it does, but fastball is the only other thing you can add on here because I've already used 9 energy of the 10 possible. For the chest armor, Arc, I highly recommend putting 2 elemental damage resistances on. Void and Arc are the most popular. And then make sure you have your Arc ammo generation mod on so that you can spawn as much Arc ammunition for your boom slaying as possible. For the legs, go ahead and put on 1 Innervation, 1 Invigoration, and of course 1 Absolution. I feel like I say the same 3 things for almost every build, but when you are a well-rounded player, you use all of your abilities equally, so it's important to get them back as quickly as possible. For the class item, I highly recommend putting on Powerful Attraction, Bomber, and Outreach. Now, some of you might be freaking out. Well, maybe not. That, hey, Durf, you don't have your class font on here. Well, there is literally no benefit to using my class ability in this build other than for some healing. So, provided that I'm not playing extremely reckless and careless, I shouldn't technically need to buff it any more than it already comes back to me. And again, we're talking about a 1-minute cooldown. If I can't survive for 1 minute in whatever activity I'm running in, I need to reevaluate either how I'm approaching it or how I'm playing. Go ahead and round it out with Bomber and Outreach. So every time you do use your class ability, which again, you're not relying on it to get these energy regeneration back faster anyways, you can get a little bit of bonus just as kind of like some icing on the cake. For the artifact, make sure you have Anti-Barrier Scout and Pulse. Make sure you also have the Overload Rapid Fire. In both cases, you'll be able to stun every champ if you have the weapons that I'm using. And remember, we'll be able to stun unstoppable champs by simply suspending them. In the second column, make sure you have Tightly Woven on so that way you gain increased class and grenade stats. In the third column, Refresh Threads. And yeah, you can put Fever and Chill on here. I like having Fever and Chill even though I'm not using a stasis weapon, so I can proc Radiant with my Ahab Char. In the fourth column, go ahead and put on Elemental Coalescence. Defeating a target has the chance to create elemental pickup matching your equipped super element. So you don't even need to be using a strand weapon to be able to generate a tangle. That's what I love about this artifact. We also have Elemental Daze. Stunning a champion with an elemental weapon creates an elementally aligned explosion, applying a matching elemental debuff to them and nearby targets. So yes, every time you stun a champion, something is going to happen. However, in the case of stunning barrier champs, the only thing you're going to essentially get are the nanites. So once you stun that champ, I highly recommend throwing a powered melee into them and then finishing them off with your Outbreak Perfected. I also do have the Cauterized Darkness equipped here. Now, the thought process behind this is that because Arcane Needle is strand, I could theoretically throw my Arcane Needle into a boss, not start off using Outbreak Perfected, but actually start off using the Ahab Char, and the enemy will actually, not a boss, but the enemy will actually take increased damage. So that Brig, at the beginning of K1, the solo ops portal activity, that's a great example. It's not technically a boss, so it will debuff on top of the solar damage you're going to be doing to it. In the last column, Shield Crush, of course, when you have Woven Mail, your melee recharges faster and deals increased damage. So on top of the subclass build, which we already went over the fragments, you get Shield Crush working on your melee to come back, and you've also got Tightly Woven working on your class ability and grenade, on top of your ability to generate orbs of power and all of those other things with your armor. So Strand is kind of in a league of its own in terms of having excuses to equip the super, not only in OG Strand world, but also in Prismatic. So I'm making a lot of these builds centered around picking up orbs of power that give me Woven Mail, whereas normally with some other builds, I may opt to go with the different super because I either like it better, I think it does more damage, or I can proc it more often. Finally, we've got Tangled Web. Creating a tangle by defeating a strand debuff target suspends nearby combatants. So on top of our aspect, we're also running Tangled Web, which again is just going to add to the suspending chaos that is going to ensue, especially in an activity where it's extremely busy. If you're running activities where they're not super busy, you may not be able to take advantage of everything that's on your screen and in the class in general, but you'll be able to cycle through them just kind of at a slower rate, if that makes sense. So one of the reasons I think you should try this build is, well, number one, Outbreak Perfected is just absolutely busted this season. I mean, from day one when I put this on for the season, it always just kind of felt a little bit better than anything else. Add to that the fact that you're going to get an additional 10% weapon damage to it, an additional 15% weapon damage to it, plus an additional 3.9% if you've got 127 weapon stat like I do, and a 26% increased chance for large ammo brick. I mean, what does that come out to? 25, 26, 27, 28. Basically, we'll just call it 30% extra damage on top of its ability to spawn the nanites, on top of your ability to debuff with poison. I mean, oh, and when you throw your melee into an enemy, you proc unraveling rounds swirling around them. So all really good things to basically take Outbreak, which is in a league of its own, and be able to deal some serious single target damage while also clearing the battlefield of adds with virtual ease. Outbreak Perfected is not hard to control. So if you haven't crafted it, or you haven't gotten to the point where you can craft it, make sure you do what you got to do to get it, and I promise you it's worth the effort. So if you did find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a Guardian out there who is looking for a way to incorporate necrotic grips into their Warlock in a way that just absolutely adds on to the overall carnage that Strand generally creates, feel free to share this video with them or send them my way. My goal is to help as many people as possible. As always, I will have a dim link in the video description, and if by chance you are looking for a non-toxic gaming community, I highly recommend you jump into my Discord. Everyone is just going nuts right now on the power grind, and they're starting to get into the upper echelons of endgame activity, so lots of partying up has been happening to try to accomplish things like titles and getting through Master, Grandmaster, and at some point, Ultimate level difficulty. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to switch over to the boss. You'll see all the different elements in action, and we will wrap it up. So one of the best things about this build, and yes, there's probably a few that you're looking at going, oh yeah, these things, yep, I could use this here, I could use this here. But one of the overall simple things of this build is how easy it is to just play. And what I mean by that is there's not really a mechanic that you're having to constantly worry about. Does anyone really need to tell you to hit your melee? No. But when you're thinking about doing, let's just use bait and switch for an example. When you're doing bait and switch, you have to be conscious about switching through your weapons in a certain order, proccing it, making sure you have enough ammo in your heavy weapon or whatever weapon you're using, etc., etc. With this, you're essentially just going through your abilities, and everything is kind of just playing off of everything else. And that's what makes this build so just simply easy to just spec into. Now, Strand is a fan favorite of all Warlocks out there. It has been since its inception. But when you add to that the ability to poison, when you add to that the ability to suspend on Q, when you add to that Outbreak is hitting like a truck this season. When you add to that Ahab Char with its ability to Scorch, and of course Boomslang with its ability to inflict Jolt, you have quite honestly, the most complete Strand build that you can come up with, and it's still not even perfected to how you might play your Warlock, wherever you might find your Warlock when you're battling the enemies of the Traveler. And that's what makes a build like this so universally easy to get into. So hopefully you guys like the video. Hopefully you guys like the build. Hopefully you can make it your own. Let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know the different ways you're using necrotic grips. I will see you guys next time. Take care.